You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Morning, everybody. Hi, this is All Things 3D, and what you're watching right now is Run Baby Run. Obviously, another stop animation done by an individual who decided that babies should be running all over the world. So behind me is a behind-the-scene look of what's going on with it. There's a separate video for that. All the work that went into it. It's amazing what people do with 3D printing, and obviously it works very well because of its repeatability of creating things like this. So again, hi. Let's see, what's today? Oh, it's the 12th, 2 days before Valentine's. Happy Valentine's, Siobhan. But today, we have some very interesting news. If you remember last week, I had talked with a company called, what was their names? I've already forgotten their name. I don't want to say Nexus 3D. That's the person we're working with today. But essentially, if you remember correctly, it was a company called New Pro 3D, and that company supposedly created the world's fastest SLA. Now, if you remember, if you watched the episode, I did an interview with one of the, I'm assuming, founders, and I found out that that actually is one of the sons of the owner, CEO of the company, who his name is Diego. And with that, I had a person call me anonymously, and I'll just call him Print Throat for now. But essentially, he called me and said there's more to this story. So I took some time to actually go out and look up that article that, if you remember, I talked about some controversy between this and another company, which I just mentioned, which is the Nexus 3D out of Italy. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up that article, and you may have already read it. This was from 3D Printing Industry, and I had talked, or actually emailed Tyler Koslow to come on and kind of verify this and go over it. But yeah, he talked about it, and if you read the article here, it talks about this Kickstarter, and then it talks about how a possible patent infringement from Diego Castanon, who is the CEO of New Pro 3D, remember the people we talked to last week, that they were violating a patent. They put out I guess, a campaign, which, I mean, rightfully so. If there is a patent violation here, I would be upset with that. But this source that I again will call Printhroat says that no, none of that really is what happened. This guy supposedly had been working with um, the company New Pro 3D since 2011. In fact, said he worked directly with Diego. The two of them had been working on another SLA type printer, and he says that there will be some patents coming out soon, which I will bring up as soon as they come available, of this particular device. And he's hoping to come to the United States and continue working with it. But essentially, his patent is based upon a dual projector design, which I thought was kind of novel. As talking with him more and more, I realized this guy seemed to know what he was talking about, and there might be some possibilities that this story might be correct. Now, if that is the case, now if you go through and read this article yourself, it talks about this registration. And then I'm going to go in and get into Nexus 3D. I've invited them on, but they are in Rome, Italy, and it was somewhat last minute. I have not received word back from them. I have sent a link out. They may be joining us. If not, as soon as we can arrange something, I will have them on. But essentially, this company started a Kickstarter, as this guy mentioned. And if you notice here, some of the same, this is a print from the new Pro 3D, but they had sent them this patent cooperation treaty that identified some naming, but and I'm familiar with this too, it doesn't really identify what the patent is on. And so it kind of talks about the different states. And so he's essentially saying that they have violated this patent on a technology. But again, my source, Printhroat, identifies no, that's not really true, because they actually, and I will bring this up in a moment, borrow the technology from another company. Actually, it's an individual called Bo Peng. So again, this is where the international controversy comes. Bo Peng, if I remember correctly, is from Taiwan, and currently I think he's working with Form Labs. But he was working, actually, he might even be from China, but he had come up with a novel idea. And the thing is that many people after the Carbon 3D announcement have come out with membrane variant. And again, this is why I call this the membrane wars, variants on the SLA process. Essentially, if you remember us talking about it on our show at length, the membrane helps what they call the peeling effect, or reduces or not even have a peeling effect, which needs to be done in order to minimize the adherence to the bed as each layer is being formed. Now, the Form 1 uses a rocker system. In fact, they have something new in the Form 2, which I won't get into. But the ideal thing is to not have any real contact with the material itself. And the carbon 3D, if you remember us talking about it, uses an oxygenated membrane. Well, that's extremely expensive. The material is extremely expensive. So there are some other solutions that are out there, and one of them, again, is from this person I just mentioned too, which I can actually go to his page right now. Actually, another article by 3D Printing Industry, who back in April had covered this right after the Carbon 3D announcement. And he, even though these are small objects, used a similar technique. But he is just, at this case, he was going to the University of Buffalo as a graduate student, and he calls it continuous DLP. Now, he immediately identifies that, at least in another interaction that we had, that he didn't patent or move forward with it because he knows that more than likely he would be stepping on some patents with Carbon 3D. But what's interesting is that the build design and so forth, at least again from my source, the Printhroat, identified that this is very similar to the new Pro 3D. Now, I haven't looked at it bolt by bolt, but it seems that the technology is very similar. Now, I noticed that the models with this particular product are quite small, and I've got a little video that I can show. Actually, yeah, here we go. That can show it being actually printed. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting is that many of these, and Chris brought it out in the last show, many of these shows, many of these videos show it in real time or sped up. Like this case, it's showing at 8 times speed. Something that wasn't really done with any of the Next Pro 3D. And if you remember, I made the comment, boy, that's going really fast. So the assumption is that it's printing in real time. Whereas in this case and in other videos, we actually see the whole time that it takes and why it was sped up. So he made it very clear that his process was, this particular video was sped up 8 times. It was a time lapse, and the actual print took 12 minutes, which obviously is far, or actually 3 times less, or 1/3 the time of what it took for the new Pro 3D, what appeared to be a much larger model. But again, that can't be verified. So as you can tell, I have some questions and doubts about what is going on here. You know, we have a product, looks very similar. Obviously, this is rough as well. But if you notice, a lot of the shots on the new Pro 3D were very tight. We don't actually see the whole product as a whole, and we could go back to their site. But the thing that I found interesting, and I'll push back to my own previous page on the accusations, is that they were going out to do a 3D, a Kickstarter, and the reason for that Kickstarter is that they wanted to make this available, this technology, this performance, at about $6,000, $7,000, which is extremely reasonable if they could create print speeds very similar to Carbon 3D, because we were told, or at least I assume, that it wouldn't be less than $10,000 for a Carbon 3D, and as of this day, you still can't get one, and they're still very, very hush-hush. I was hoping to have somebody on from Carbon 3D a couple months ago, and actually about a month ago, and they backed out last minute saying that they're not ready to talk about anything yet. So I thought that was a little odd. But so you're welcome to read this, but essentially the whole point is he found it very questionable too. Who owns the patent? Where did it come from? And as he says, it's a misfortune, but is it the truth? The patentability priority is a king, but it's kind of first come, first served. And, you know, who actually created this? Is it just a matter of a patent being filed? And if we go by the word of my source, PrintThroat, no, Diego had actually obtained this from somewhere else, immediately patented it, or went through the process. And again, he thinks that this might not be quite true. But if that is the case, if you remember, new 3D or new print 3D didn't really identify that they were going to have a product, that they were going to work with people individually, which I thought was a little odd. And again, from my source, this is in order to obtain as much money, as much money as possible through this technology. So if we jump over to the Nexus 3D, notice it's a very polished website. And more importantly, let's see if they have, if we can go. Here's an image of it. And I think I remember seeing this before, but, you know, I felt, did I read the controversy at that time? I don't know. But again, this is a very polished look. And let's see, here we go. So here's the process, very clean, shows again, you know, that same object, and there's a reason for that. And as I mentioned before, with these permeable membranes, the lattice structures seem to be the best because they actually provide the support structure in itself. Also, from what my source said, if you notice, none of the objects that were printed by the new Pro 3D were solid, and that'll bring up another image that I'll show in a second. Because if you remember, there were some solids, but then I found out through another source of mine, which we've had on the show before, Steve Hernandez. I asked him, do you know what slicer they're using with the new Pro 3D? And he didn't know, but he took a look at it and said, you know, there's some trademark signatures to prints that are done with my software, and it really looks like they're using my software. And if you remember, I asked that question, and they were very vague about it. Now, the Print Throat thinks it's a version of Repetier, but I don't think so. I have to agree with my friend Steve because he's had several other people use his software, especially with DLP 3D print. Now, I haven't verified this with New Pro 3D. I will do so today. But, the plot thickens. So if you look at it, I mean, it's very nice. Now, obviously, these are renders. Um, let's see if we actually, let's go to the gallery here. Now, another thing to keep in mind, this company is out of Rome, Italy, and so again, there's question if this is an actual product. I do think there was a video, let's see if I can find it, that actually shows it printing. Here we go. Now, again, very interesting. Obviously, the render showed a very polished model that I don't know exist in real life. I was hoping to have them on, but again, I haven't had them. Uh, they have not confirmed. But this is their video, essentially showing a very similar product to the last two. Again, using a blue material. I don't know if that is coincidence. And the same model. But notice they show a real-time video. This is actually taking place in real time. The other thing is the light looks, I thought it was a little odd that they had blue in the new Pro 3D. Normally it's more towards the violet spectrum, which would be the case here. So as you can see, there is a ton of stuff going on. They're still moving forward with their product. I again hope to have them on. Maybe they'll join us here shortly. If not, hope that will happen next week. As mentioned, a lot of people think that their Kickstarter kind of went south because of all the information coming out from New Pro 3D. New Pro 3D was at CES with a viable product, but even then, there's been concerns because they didn't actually have it visible. I wasn't there. I will have to follow up on that. But again, my source, as I mentioned, I will call him Print Throat, was came out with a lot of interesting information, and a lot of it seemed extremely valid. And again, I will confirm this. Supposedly, he will be able to present me his patent, and we'll move forward with it. But here is a lot of response. If we go out to the new Pro 3D, or I'll let you do the comparison yourself. Here, they're really wanting to move forward with a product that you can buy. They talk about what you can and cannot have with it. If you remember in my discussion in New Pro 3D, I didn't really get the satisfaction that it was a complete project, and some of the responses were a little bit vague, like what software was being used, as mentioned, my friend, and actually I'll bring up the image that there was some concerns. It was this one here, and my source told me, and again, I have no confirmation of this. If somebody out there has printed this or knows where this particular image came from, this supposedly was not even printed on their printer. It was printed elsewhere, and now, if it was printed elsewhere, then it would make sense that this particular model was not using his software. If the model was not printed on their printer, then obviously the software does not matter. But he said that some of the other models appeared to have it. And I guess there's some trademark, not necessarily trademark, but signature, where he puts his supports and so forth that obviously if he designed it, he would know. And he feels strongly that they're using his software. And it's sad because Steve has had this happen, especially with some Chinese companies who are marketing products and just packaging his software without even giving him credit or recognition, or even paying him licensing on it. But being an open source product, he would at least like to have it credited. But so there we go. That's about it. Like I said, it spans several continents. I come actually, what are the continents? North America, South America, Europe, and Asia are the companies involved in this. I think we're going to see more of it. This fast SLA printing obviously is something that is very important and can be actually very lucrative, and I can see why we have a lot of contesting here. So it'll be interesting to see what the actual patents look like. I tried to look them up. They are not available yet, but that's not uh, surprising. Many patents that are filed, they have a period of time where they can use the word patent pending, and all you have to show, you actually don't have to show anything, and you're protected. I think it's 12 to 18 months from anybody else seeing your patent until it becomes a patent. But the problem with that process is that if you had just copied somebody else's and then immediately patented it, then you become secured, or at least you can start throwing that term around, and then other people can show some concerns with that possibly being an issue or may not being an issue. But I found that this all to be very, very questionable, and we'll just continue to cover this over the next few episodes. Again, I hope that I can have the Nexa 3D people on. Their time zone probably differentiates us. And maybe I'll be able to actually have the print throat on. Maybe we'll darken his face or something, mask his voice. I don't know. I don't know if he needs to be that anonymous, but for now, I'm going to leave it that way. So that's about it. There'll be more information coming later on that topic. So let's move into some of our more interesting news items. And let's see what we've got. Well, we'll go right into our lead video, and that is Run, Baby, Run. Well, again, I thought this was very, very interesting, odd, but this, thank you, Kira from 3ders.org. But Run Baby Run is a 2-minute and 50-second little video that essentially is an animated or stop animated little baby running through multiple scenes with some interesting music behind it. There's the actual artist himself, and I guess that's the size of it. It goes through his process. There, like I said, there's a making a video that I'll get to in a moment, but here's some stills of it. So essentially, does it say what he prints it on? But he creates these and talks about some of the failed prints, but it looks like an SLS nylon prints. And so, like I said, there's a making of video, the whole process of the creation of it. And looks like he actually, so yes, it is. So yes, it does appear to be an SLS type printer that he has. And he goes through the process of creating each one, cleaning them up. And as you can see, cleaning them up there. I'll move forward. Oh, interesting. I was not aware. So he creates the backdrops. So very fun, very odd. Kind of reminds me of the animated video that came out many years, the Dancing Baby. Maybe that's a spin-off of it, but very odd, very interesting. Run, baby, run. Okay, well, you can read more about that in the show notes. Another item that I thought was very interesting and surprises me, and if you notice, Chris is not here today. He actually may be at this conference or some print conference, but he's busy, could not make it with us. But I guess SolidWorks has something for children. Now, I find this a little interesting because um, we have all been hoping that they would come out with their own little application that so I think it's very interesting because SolidWorks has a very expensive application. It is the mainstay of the design, or at least the 3D design in Solid, hence the name SolidWorks. However, one of the reasons for that is, at least in our university here, it is the staple of the design and engineering, and they have great pricing as a student. I think it's free during that time frame. And after that, obviously, there's a cost to it. I think it's about $7,000, maybe a little cheaper than that, but you also have to get a service package with it. So this is a very expensive product. As you know, there are solutions from Autodesk with their Fusion 360. There's another company out there that we've covered on several occasions as well. And we're finding more and more options. So Chris and I have always talked about, why don't they offer a subscription-based application? And maybe that's still coming, but I think it's kind of funny that they're coming out with an application now for children. And here we see this individual, I guess, talking about what she did this summer and using this little application to design a hat. And I guess this came in and it was printed. There you go. So she designed it, printed it, and I guess there's one for the, well, a 3D printed hat for her teddy bear. Actually, the 3D print doesn't look too good, but I think it's very interesting that they're coming up with little applications. It seems they're taking a page from Autodesk. If you know, they have their 1, 2, 3D series of applications. So it looks like we're doing the same thing at SolidWorks. So here's hopes that there may be a subscription-based version of SolidWorks soon. However, I'm kind of in the, I guess, Autodesk team with Fusion 360, and kind of invested a lot of time in it. So I guess that's the key. If you invest a lot of time in it, you're willing to put the money and time for it. Luckily, Fusion 360 is not that expensive. But I thought that was very cool. So if you're interested in getting your kids started or hooked, however you want to word it, on SolidWorks early on, you might want to check this out. So the link will be in the show notes. So let's move right on into 3D in medicine. And I thought this was kind of interesting. And this really isn't a technology per se, but, you know, we had a 3D fabricator from Egypt on. And one of the things that we talked about was the difficulty it was to get 3D printers. They were actually very expensive. So this was one of the things that I thought of. But this person went to a show on technology and medicine and noticed that there really wasn't a lot on 3D printing in this show. So he asked a few people why this might be, other than, I guess he makes a point that Israel would be one of the companies that are not. And one of the things is, that I had already identified, is because the cost of printing is expensive and it's hard to get. But it appears that this is changing, and we're now going to see more in the Arab world from a 3D printing standpoint, and kind of talks about why. So if you want to know more about this, you can head out to 3dprint.com and read the article by Scott Grunwald if you want to know more about this information. And yeah, I thought it was very interesting. So let's see where we're at now. Let's jump right into a scanning application. So I have worked with a lot of people with 3D scanning. I've run my own application as well as made some changes to a very popular small 3D scanner called the occipital structure sensor. But there are a lot of applications for that. And in my case, I've written an application to be used with orthotics. Some people are using my lens system to scan hands now. I don't know what their technology is, but there's a company called FrameLab out of Germany who will use 3D scanning to create not only a pair of glasses that conform to your head, but actually print the lenses out. And here they have a variety of lenses and the colors that it will print. And so I thought that was very cool. If I translate, it doesn't give me that option. Well, if you can read German, you can read it, but you can translate it. But essentially, it talks about the sustainability, the quality features, and why you want to move forward with that. Obviously, if you have to be scanned, it's not something that you can do through the mail. You'll have to actually go there and do it. But I think this is a novel approach. One of the reasons I was attracted to this. My wife has been looking for glasses, and she has spent a lot of time, not necessarily a lot of money. She likes to shop um, frugally, and she noticed that lenses are always cheaper online. The problem is what they look like in images versus what they actually look like as a tangible object are two different things. Plus, the fit may not be appropriate, which I guess is one of the reasons why the brick and mortars still are prominent in this area. But that's changing. One of the ways that it's changing is that you can try the glasses on, let's say virtually, by overlaying the frame and glass over an image that you took of yourself. But let's say that we could actually conform it to your head and then show you what it would look like if you were 3D scanned. And I think that'll be the future. And obviously, they're doing it at a brick and mortar store here to provide a customizable feature that's not normally available. Now, one thing I did notice is pricing. So I have a feeling that it probably would carry a higher price. But again, another application, not necessarily in medicine, but obviously we need to use glasses if we cannot see. So on to my next item, right into VR corner in a round room. And I thought this was funny, and I was hoping to have him on as well. And he just had, I think it was a baby boy. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yan Man, but yeah, he wrote to me earlier in the week and said that that he's been extremely busy, a lot of popularity in this, and I do have the video, which I'll show here. Uh,
Hey there, it's me again. If
but
you've been
essentially,
following
what
along,
he has
I've been
done
making this weird Arduino
is
thing on the channel for the
created
past couple of weeks, and I haven't really said what.
using an Arduino system and an opto reflector is a circuit
And
that
so what I'm making
counts or actually ticks off the revolutions of either a tire. He says you can use it on a number of things that have repetitive motion. But if you can hear him in the background. So what he has done, I'll put it down, is created, and then he's taken his standard bike with the back wheel support and placed a dot, if you see down there in the bottom, little white mark, and then he positions his Arduino, powers it with a little 9-volt battery, interesting, and lines up the sensor, the opto reflector right there. And I guess you can listen to it yourself. But so he essentially sets this all up, then tunes it, and then we'll get in further. Then he pulls out his Google Cardboard, but he wants to wear it, so he gets a plastic version so he can mount it. He puts his phone in it, but the thing about his little Arduino is that it includes a Bluetooth radio. So he has that connected, and it sends the pulse stream back to his Unity application so that it can count the pulses and use that to advance his camera or the first person view. Here, thought this call. So he's talking about that. And then here we go. He's going to put it on. He's going to get on his bike. Notice the virtual bike there. He pulled a city out of, Unity has a great store for buying virtual objects to place in your games. So he got a complete city, downloaded it, put his code into it. Now if you go out to his site, he provides the Arduino code as well as the code for Unity, so that if you want to try this out yourself. I don't know what the purpose is of the actually I think I do. I think has that plugged in so that it's not running off the battery. I don't think there's any cables. It's, like I said, a Bluetooth connection. So he explains the whole process, and you may hear a little bit now. I think I turned it all the way down. And then he goes on this little journey, and I'll let you spend some time. So as he's pedaling, if you know he's moving around, he can look around in the world. And he has little quips as he's going through. Now, the point that he's making is that he is not actually turning. It's a program route. All he has to do is pedal. One of the things that he suggests, and again, he suggests other people to do this, is design something that takes in the information from the handlebars so that you can actually turn in the game. So I thought that was very, very interesting. It's gotten a lot of attention. There are some, what do you want to call it, finished products, which are actually aren't finished, that are going to be providing the same capability, but they're anywhere from $300 up to thousands of dollars. So for a super cheap 40, unless you've got an Arduino laying around, maybe $5 or $10 for the opto coupler and the Bluetooth. So maybe you can do it even cheaper. If you have all that, just get yourself an opto coupler, which I think is only like $3 or $4. So you could do this on the cheap. It's something that when I find some time, I want to do and bring it up to the Shriners. I think that would be very cool for the kids who, again, who are confined to the hospital. They do have some exercise bikes that they can work with in the physical therapy, provide them something a little bit more than TV, and I think could be very fun. I could see the multi-user option with this as well, where you could have multiple people, put them in a bicycle race, so there'd be some competitive. Don't even have to be in the same room. Could be in different rooms, could be in different states, world locations, who knows. So I thought that was very, very cool. Thank you, Yan Man. Very interesting and innovative little product. All right, now I want to go on to my other item. And who knew? Who knew? Well, actually, I did. But Amazon, who seems to have their fingers in everything, has come out with their own gaming engine. Well, what does that have to do with us? Most of the gaming engines today provide 3D functionality. The other thing that's very important, and we covered it a few episodes ago, is Crytek. Well, I was going to talk about it a little bit, but I thought there's a possibility that Crytek may have been purchased or helped out by Apple. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. Obviously, Apple has their Scene Kit, which is, in my opinion, kind of an unfinished 3D engine. Oh, hello.
Hi, how are you?
My earbuds back in.
Sorry about that. You know, I had to install the software, and I don't mean to interrupt your show, but I said that I would join you, and I'm here.
Hi, and well, Jeff, you're supposed to be anonymous, so I guess the cat is out of the bag. We won't spend a lot of time. How about having you come back on maybe next week if we can get Nexus 3D in? You know, I kind of covered it. I gave you your own little special name, the Print Throat, to add a little bit of espionage thrill to this. But, you know, the thing is, and by the way, to our guest out there,
yep.
this is Jeff, and you're the last. Do you want to give your last name, or let's just leave it at Jeff? Let's leave it at Jeff for now.
Yeah, we'll leave it at Jeff for now. It's fine.
Okay. Well, Jeff came to me after our last show and said, you know, there's more to that story with New Pro 3D, and we talked for about I don't know, close to an hour, and you gave me the history of your work with it. And I took some notes here, and went back and looked at
observations of what when I look at their demonstrations of what I see. Yeah, I'm not trying to make any statements that would cause anybody problems at my end.
Yes, and I pretty much covered it like that. It was essentially nothing. A lot of confirmation on your part. As you mentioned, you'll have as soon as your patents are available, you'll send me links to those so that I can see, you know, the duality there. I compared bow pangs as well as the Nexus 3D, who all work on a similar technology, and I noticed the prototype of the Nexus 3D looks a lot like the New Pro 3D as well. But you know, there's how much different can you make a Z-axis and you know, bed? They all look very similar. What's more important is the membrane. One thing I did found that was kind of neat on the Nexus is that they show that in real time. And obviously it's the full 12 minutes. And the thing that I noticed about the New Pro 3D, I'm sorry, the bow pang, is the size scale was much smaller. But both the Nexus 3D and the New Pro 3D appeared to have a larger bedside and larger objects. So maybe that's a refinement on that process. Well, the other thing that I noticed is, and I went to my source, I don't know if I mentioned this in our telephone conversation, but I am friends and had Steve Hernandez on several times, and he has heard of you, and we talked about it, and yes, he remembers you. And he went and looked at some of the models, and he's, you know, I believe him. I guess you would notice some signatures of your software because you know where your support structures would be built. And he says clearly that at least the red item and some of the others look like they were done on his software. And if you remember in my interview, I asked specifically that. And to me, I don't see how something like that could be left out. Now, again, I don't know. You mentioned that they're using some open source Repetier. Steve Hernandez is also open source, but he would appreciate people either one, licensing it, or two, identifying that they're using his software. And he's had this issue in China as well, and that's why that came up. And it's a pretty decent piece of software. Yeah,
it's an awesome piece of software. You know?
So, like I said, Jeff, maybe we'll hold off until next week when we get Nexus 3D on, and we can all talk about it. But I do think there's more to this. I also talked to Tyler briefly, who wrote that article, who is busy, who might be able to come on as well. He also had some questions about this whole situation as well, and some validation on the patent and so forth. He thought that the Nexus 3D seemed very polished in their presentation. I don't know if they actually have a working model of their renders yet, but at least the structure of their Kickstarter and their website seem, in my opinion, up, or at least present as though that the product will be available. So I would like to talk more. I will get back with Nexus, our next New Pro 3D, and talk to them about some of these things that have come out, mentioning no names, more in particular their software, since I can confirm with Steve Hernandez on that. But yeah, I'm a little concerned about this, as we talked about on the phone, and we'll move more on that until next time. So you can hang in there and listen to the rest of my show. My co-host, I think, is either at a SolidWorks convention or some other convention, so he couldn't get off this morning, so I'm doing this all by myself. So it's probably a little more boring than it normally is, but so thank you, Jeff, and I look forward to you coming back on next week.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Okay. You have a nice day.
Bye.
Okay.
So, as mentioned, that was Jeff, I guess I can't use my anonymous word anymore, darn. But that was the print throat. As mentioned, he had called me. He says that he has worked with the person behind New Pro 3D on some other projects and has been following this story for some time. Okay, well, back to Lumberyard. So Amazon worked with Crytek. I guess they actually kind of bailed them out, or I don't know the whole story, but there's some involvement with Crytek. And from that, they must have got the rights to be able to use. So maybe they bought the rights to use Crytek, and they've come out with their own gaming engine, which I've downloaded. I haven't had a chance, but I'm very familiar with the CryEngine and its tools. And I noticed the downloads, they're large, so spend some time downloading it, are almost identical to the Crytek CryEngine. I think, what is it, version 3. So if you've worked with it in the past, you'll be right at home with this. This is the same thing. I noticed that Crytek, and I've got a little video that I'll show you while I'm talking, which I thought is cool. I don't think I've shown this before.
Peggy 12.
But this is the trailer. This will be out on the PlayStation, so they are working with Sony. But essentially, this is called Robinson's. Now I can't remember the journey. And essentially, it's a little boy who gets stranded on a planet, obviously that has dinosaurs, and I guess this is his little robot. And he goes through and he talks about their journey and what they'll be doing. And I think it's kind of interesting. And as you can see, it's a first person. But one of the things that, if you're a gamer or if you've been following 3D real-time engine technologies, the CryEngine has spectacular, as you can see here, vegetation. And one of the running jokes for many years is, can it run whatever the Crytek game of the month was? But can it run any of these type of games, because it requires some beefy hardware. And I think that still holds true today. They do have the capability now to, I guess, export out to PlayStation, and the capability to export out to Xbox, but as well as PC and a Mac, and they're going to provide more support for Android and iOS. But that's going to be coming available on the PS3, or actually the PS4. So if you're interested in that, you might look into it. But back to Lumberyard. So as I mentioned, Amazon helped out Crytek. They probably bought some rights to some software, so they now have their own gaming engine that's downloadable for free. It is, like I just showed you, a very gorgeous engine. A lot of people have talked about it, as here using CryEngine. And it looks like the ability to bring in assets is different than in the past, or easier. So you'll be able to use Blender or other tools to work with it. It, as mentioned, has real-time gameplay editor, which it does. So as you make changes to it, it shows up. Again, you'll need a machine with some horsepower, but that's kind of cool. It has, as they say, compelling characters. You'll be able to immediately create characters and put them in your game. Robust networking. One of the things, because Amazon has done so much on their back end, they've now included some of these. So you'll be able to, almost out of the box, be able to use some of these tools to create multiplayer games. Here we talk about Amazon Game Lift. You have the AWS, which is the Amazon server SDK. If you're familiar with any backend stuff, they drive a lot of different companies. And in fact, I use them for a lot of my backup stuff. Very reasonably priced, very powerful. In fact, if I remember correctly, Facebook relies on their servers. So there you go. If Facebook can handle it, obviously they can handle a little game of yours. So very cool new application. New, old, I guess, but as mentioned, all the software is for free. Now that's a little anticlimactic, because you can also get free software from Unreal now. You can also get free software from Unity. So you've got 3 gaming engines to pick from. Now, CryEngine themselves support a subscription for indies, which I think is like $70 a month. But since this literally is the CryEngine, you now have this for free too from Amazon, plus some new stuff that Amazon does say that they're going to be supporting VR, and that is something that CryEngine also, or sorry, Crytek said they'll be supporting as well in the future. In fact, if you notice, that little demo I showed you is going to be VR. And they've had a couple of others too. So everybody is really pushing for these very, very cool VR experiences. So looking forward to that. Okay, so let's move on into my next item, which is, what do I got here? I think this is Splunking in the Tech Cave, which we should make sure that I've covered everything. Yep. So I've got a couple things to show you. I have been, as you know, working with a lot of VR lately. Designed my own Yoti VR loop. So I have spent some time working with a lot of different VR systems. So one that I thought I'd take a look at, one, because I was very interested in it, and it finally came in, and that's the OS VR. Now, I have it behind me. It comes in a nice big box, but seems to be eco-friendly. It is cardboard. And it's kind of generic, but I like that. And I've already taken it apart, but I can give you a quick inventory. So obviously you have the headset. Now it's nothing overly dramatic. It's a little bit, it's sturdy. It seems solid. It seems a little heavy. But one of the reasons that might be is that it has some very interesting optics. That actually is a 2 lens system, and they seem fairly large. If you can see in there, they're not quite 50. They're about 40, 46 or something like that, some odd number. And what I thought was kind of interesting, supposedly this is an OLED, but if you notice, you can't even see the OLED, there you go, is kind of on a silver background, a silver plane. And so unlike your phone, which I'm assuming has a protective layer built into it, or even a filter, this may be without it. I don't yet know yet. I'll contact them to find out. But obviously, that's not so important, because when you have it up to your face, you don't have any ambient light. So that may be one of the reasons they decided to go with something that would provide more more transmissivity versus diffusing it with other layers of filters and so forth. So other than that, it's pretty comfortable. Actually, it's really comfortable. They've gone with what they call a bamboo type material. It's pretty soft. And then it has a proprietary type connector that feeds into a little clip. And then on the other end, and I have them upstairs, it has a slot for a USB 3 connector, an HDMI, and power. And those all have to be included, but it's nice that it's a little clip you can put on your belt, and then be able to connect to your computer with a long series of cables if you want. So then you put it on, and I'll do it very quickly. So one of the things that I noticed with this is that and I found this, maybe I just have a big bridge on my nose here, that the nose areas always seems to be a little tight. And I noticed with this one as well, notice the foam doesn't go into this area. I wish they would support this with a little bit more foam, because it does seem to hurt my nose a little bit. But I seem to have that problem with the majority of these. So Again, I guess that's from playing too many years of football and getting my head bashed in. Yep, that's my problem. I have some problems there. Okay. Well, that's besides the point. So this is the OSVR. It also comes with a camera system very similar to the Oculus DK2, and you plug this in, and like the Oculus 2, it has a light array in the headset itself, maybe one of the reasons why it's heavier. And that light array allows us to track your head positioning in three-dimensional space. The thing that they identify, though, and I haven't tried it yet, is that it can actually do room tracking, not just a small space. And I don't know how well that works. There may be reasons why Oculus has not done that. They did say in a previous article, I guess Lucky Palmer said that there was a version that they were working on or experimented with, but maybe they found that wasn't too successful. Or the fact is, wires are somewhat confining, and until they can create a full mobile experience, it's best probably not to move around. That will probably be an issue with the HTC Vive, but those people who have tried it really like it, so maybe they've got something there. So that is supposedly a feature that I can try on this. We'll see. Now, as I said, the headset is nice, but it's about DK2 technology. Lenses are nicer, but the actual screen is still an OLED, low persistence, but only a 1080p. As you know, the ones from the HTC Vive and the new Oculus Rift will have 25 by 60, if I remember correctly, by 1200 or something like that. It may even have independent screens for each eye, if I remember reading that properly. So this is like last generation, but the big difference is, if you know the Oculus, at least, we don't know the price on the HTC Vive, will be close to $500-600, and then you need a good PC. The OSVR is only $300, and you don't need a beefy machine. Now, obviously, it would help, but you can run it on anything. I have already played a couple of things with it. Haven't gotten it to work in Unity yet. I'll have to figure that out. And it's also even difficult right now. You'll be able to export to other platforms like Android, iOS, and other items. So could be an interesting, if you've got $300 and you don't want to wait for the new CV1 or the CV2. I can't remember now. You might want to look into this. Like I said, though, it's about the quality of the DK2. Lenses are a little bit better, so if you didn't like the lenses in the DK2, you might like this. Personally, I think it's worth its $300. It's solid. It's reasonably comfortable, unless you've got a wide bridge nose like I do. It's very responsive, and again, depending on your computer, but the fact is you're not limited. One thing that I kind of was annoyed with Oculus, if you update to Windows 10, you have to update the drivers as well, and then the drivers now look to see what type of video cards you have, and if you have a mobile video chip, which I had in my laptop, it won't work on it anymore. And that really disappointed me, because I actually got some good experiences out of that, at least with the DK2. So that may not be may not be the case with the newer CV1 or CV2, whatever they plan to call it. And but at least on my DK2, they should have left it alone or had some way to go back to it. Now, I've tried to go back to a previous driver, but the previous drivers are not Windows 10 compatible. So that was a problem for me. Now I can't use it on the laptop and can only use it on the desktop, which it still works. So I'm disappointed with that. Kind of seems like you're kind of bricking your device just in order to move progress forward. And I don't know, kind of disappoints me. But solid device. So if you don't have a beefy machine, want to use it with a laptop, you may want to go with this. As said, it also can work with Android. The process is very similar to the DK, but since they're open source, they have a wider spectrum of headsets that their OS works with, or their SDK. So there's more more variables involved with it. It doesn't seem as polished, but that could be more my lack of experience. But the games that I did try seem to work fairly well. There's one, you can go out to their site and there are a few games out there, and I think there'll be more games out there, and we'll see where that goes. But nice little headset. And then finally, as you probably or may not be aware of, I have both the DK1 and the DK2. Well, the DK1 has been collecting dust, but I have been working with a great deal of Android devices. One, because, as you know, in my last show, I took out the guts from the Gear VR and put it on my Neota VR Loop, but I still required a Samsung phone. So I thought, well, what can I do? What's out there right now that has very responsiveness? And if you remember, I had one little image that showed me with the loop on my my NVIDIA Shield tablet. Now, the cool thing is the NVIDIA Shield tablet has the NVIDIA K1 chip in it. And there is strong rumors, that they're going to be releasing this year a new version of the tablet with the X1. And the reason that this is extremely important is that this essentially is an NVIDIA graphics chip embedded with an ARM chip in order to create an Android experience. So I wanted to test how fluid the games were in this versus my iOS versions of the Unity, and found that even though my Note 4 with a Google Cardboard was very slow and sluggish, this tablet here was extremely responsive. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool, again, if I could take this and wear it on my head? Now, I know there's a product out there from Dive that works with 7-inch tablets, but I think I don't know if they have a local representative, but I think they come out of Germany. And one, it probably would have taken a week or two to get it. Two, is about $100. And I don't really know how well it works. I don't know how well the optics are. But then I remembered sitting in my closet, I had a DK1 minding its own business. So I thought, well, wouldn't that be perfect? So I was testing it for another reason. So then I thought, wow, if you remember, the headset on the DK1 was wide. Why? Because it supported a very large screen, almost more like a 6x10 or a 4x3 screen. So it had this wide area here. So I thought, because I had taken one apart before, what if I took it apart, pulled out all the electronics? I seem to have that tendency lately, and put the tablet in front of it, which is what I did. So I put a metal paste, so supposedly the shield, I was always wondering, and even though they don't have an accessory, on the bottom of the shield are two little notches, but also what's built in there is a magnet. So you can actually, I was assuming that they may have had a keyboard planned at one time, or maybe a docking station that this mounts into with a magnetic base. Well, I took advantage of that with a little metal plate, one of my blue steel metal plates, and it kind of doesn't hold it very well because I have some electrical tape to provide some support for it. But then I had these new nifty silicone bands, and then I put in a bolt on the bottom to allow me to put it on, and there you go. I had the new Shield VR experience. And I've converted the lenses from the DK1 to these new 50-inch. I 3D printed a new mount for them. Put some, like the previous version, there's not much room for my big nose. So it kind of bumps against it. So I put some silicone supports that I use with my loop. So essentially I have kind of a loop now with a tablet. And I knew that the loop worked pretty good with it, but it was confined to a 5-inch or 5.5 screen. The tablet's 8 inches, and the little DK2 supports almost actually to the edges. With my 50 millimeter lenses, you literally go out to the edges. The only problem is, since the screen itself is not inset, it's on the outside surface, I had to make the adjustments in the focal length. But I need to add a little extension to the separator between the two screens, because since it's so wide, I actually get some crossover, and you can see it a little bit. I also noticed that the 50 millimeter lenses require very little pin cushion adjustment. In fact, almost none. So I've now turned that off, which also gives me better performance in my Unity applications. But running it on this, it runs, in my opinion, as smooth or smoother than my iOS experience or the Gear VR. Well, maybe not quite the Gear VR. The other thing I wanted to test was the IMU built into the tablet. Sadly, even though they use, I think, a 6550, which is a pretty good performing IMU, like all the other Androids, it's throttled down. So that could be a limitation. But if you remember, this tablet is only $200 now. And even though I use the DK1, so if you wanted to find a purpose for your DK1, that's not an extra cost, and just a few, I don't know, maybe a few dollars worth of extra part. Like I use this silicone strap in the front, a little metal bar in the front, but mainly maybe $5 worth of extra parts out of it. Or you can go with the Dive 7-inch VR, which supposedly fits this as well. I don't know if the cavity is as wide as the 8-inch screen like this here, but that's another option, and it's already finished. But the lenses on the Gear VR aren't the same as this one here. So, but that's an option. I may look into that. So I don't know what you think about that, but pretty cool. On to, let's see if there's anything else on that. Well, the other thing is, if you do have a DK1 and you do dismantle it, what are you going to do with the electronics? Well, the cool thing is, especially if you're doing video work, you have a nice little 6-inch screen that you can use. It does support 1080p, up to 60 frames per second, so that you could use it with your cameras. Now, keep in mind that you do have to have a USB 5-volt source as well as the power supply, so you'll have to create a splitter for that, then mount it in a little tiny case, but you have a screen, so that doesn't go to waste. All right, well, that's about it. Let's see what else I've got. No, I think that's about it. Oh, well, obviously, I'll talk about it more, but it appears that Google announced that they're going to be coming out with a Google Cardboard VR device of their own, and that they're going to be updating their Android, as I was hoping, to support more VR experiences. And I thought I'd show you this. This was on earlier this week, the Vision Summit for Unity. Their keynote, they had a few people up, one of them being Lucky Palmer, who made a deal that if you go with their professional subscription, you will get a free CV1, 2, whatever they call it, the commercial version of the, if you join up for that. I don't know. That was just announced. There's nothing on their website yet. There's going to be inclusion of HTC Vive as one of the VR headsets, as well as Google Cardboard, which will all be built in the Unity now. So you won't require those extra plugins. You just need to identify which unit, or maybe not. Maybe it will automatically configure it. Don't know, but lots of cool stuff there. Sadly, I'm not there. And I guess the people who actually attended the Vision Summit got a free HTC Vive as well. If I would have known that, I don't know, but it was somewhat expensive, and I have other things that I'm working on right now. So that's the other thing. Into the news on what's coming up. There's a ton of stuff. No, other than the Inside 3D Printing in Dusseldorf, which is later in the month. Really not a lot if we move on. One of the things that I thought was interesting, I noticed in, was it LinkedIn, that the editor-in-chief of 3D Print, one of the major blogs, has a new job now, so I guess she's no longer with it. And if you've been following the financial market, both 3D Systems and Stratasys continue to drop. So I'm a little afraid that the fabrication or the consumer part is kind of losing its allure, and it's showing in the market. I didn't actually attend CES, so I don't know if the presence there was as dramatic as it was last year. But I don't see the same number of items now that I did before, and it seems like VR, obviously I'm interested in it, it seems to be taken over that consumer allure that you had with 3D fabrication. I think 3D fabrication is very important. That's why Chris and I cover it. And sadly, he's not here to provide us anything on the Print Whisper. So on that note, I am going to say goodbye. Thank you out there for listening. I've gotten a few emails and some support comments, enjoying what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing, and I hope that you like what I'm doing. And I seem to be babbling a little bit more. Sorry, I'm tired today. I hope you can, if you're here at the end of my show, I hope it wasn't too burdensome on you. Anyways, that's it for another episode of 3D in Review for the week of 5 through 12 February 2016. Bye.